Right, I'm getting ready to leave, right, and visit my home state here in Australia, and I've looked through my uploads and I realized I'm one video short for the time that I will be away. So, I present today's topic, right? Look at these two items. Yeah. Are they equal? Far from it, right? I'm pretty sure we all know absolutely how trash Silverwind Shuriken is, right? I have no idea what on earth they were thinking with its effect, right? I mean, the rationale here is it's a blue pitchable, right? So a blue pitchable for a reaction buff is usually around a +1, but yeah, no. Just no. And then we compare it to the Spirit of Irina, right? Very nice. Very good for Bolton's whole dynamic, right? It Cindra as well, which is what the Shuriken is trying to do with, combo-ness, but just doesn't hit the mark. So, point of this video, right? The conversation that I want to have is items and their place in FaB, right? So we'll put them aside for now and we'll go to a stock standard item, right? A nice energy potion. So an energy potion, what does it do? Well, you put it on the board, consumes the last little bit of your turn most likely, right? Because it doesn't have go again, it's not instant, can't block with it. And it is a blue pitchable, so you can cycle it around at the very least. But you set up on board, and then any of your following turns, right, you have an instant, destroy this, gain 2 resources, right? So it's like you're preserving 66% of a card, right? Because that's the pitch value. So red, 33%. Am I doing this right? Yellow, 66. It's a downgrade to what you can pitch the energy potion for, right? But it's a luxury of essentially going +1 in intellect, right? Because you have 1 extra card for you to utilize on a turn you want. In fact, it's kind of better than +1 intellect, right? Because you can utilize it on any turn you want. So the question to start with, right, is essentially how good should items be, right? Should they be more powerful than having a card in hand? Probably not, right? Should they be half as powerful? I feel like that's a bit on the low end, right? Again, it's kind of a tough dynamic because, again, if we look at Silverwind Shuriken, well, the problem with that is they've statted it the same as they would a blue reaction, right? But they haven't accounted for the fact that you can't block with it, and the fact that, again, doesn't have go again, it will be the last thing you do on your turn, and that's just so awkward, right? Can't open with it and then go into stuff and maybe use it straight away if need be. So you're taking a blue pitchable and downgrading to a +1 buff without go again, right? So there is something lost there. So I guess the second question to ask would be, how much do we value go again, right? So for instance, if I presented this energy potion to you, right? So energy potion, same thing, instant destroy this, gain 2 resources, but now it has go again, right? So when you put it onto the board, you can use it straight away. But why would you, right? Because using it straight away is 1 less resource than if it was in your hand. So is that not still kind of balanced, right? The only caveat that you have here is that it can now chain with what you're doing, right? If you have an attack to finish your turn, that can be your finisher, right? The item you're putting out doesn't have to be the end of your turn. And that's sort of what they were going for, right? When we take a look at amulets, right? So amulets, or the items of Everfest or items going forward, have been worded a lot better in the essence that they have been given go again. They have been enabled to, again, fit into whatever build you're trying to do. The balancing act, though, that LSS has done, is then given them really shit abilities, right? Just, we agree. All the items from Everfest, as nice as they are, as combory or, burst potential as they could be, generally speaking, the majority of them are way too conditional, right? So, again, They've tried to keep the balancing act. They don't want it to be a straight +1 to hand, so they don't want it to be equivalent to any given card, right? So the way they've done that is, again, we'll use an example. So we'll go with the Amulet of Assertiveness, right? Because this is quite a strong effect, right? It's still conditional. So go again, attack reaction, destroy Amulet of Assertiveness. Target attack gains when this hits bans the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card, you may play it this turn. So that is quite the high potential. But then it has the condition. Activate this ability only if you have 4 or more cards. Now, the idea here would most likely be that you play the amulet and you can't use it the turn you play, right? That is my rationale for why LSS would put the +4. But then we get into issues with future turns, because if you're not attacking with a card from the arsenal, regardless of cost, right? No weapon swings that we have so far are free, so there's no way to utilize this. Mind you, Fang, interesting argument to make, right? the fact that you can open with a swing and then use this to maybe get an attack action, warrior, yeah, there's kind of the problem. But nonetheless, right, so that limiting factor of having 4 or more cards in your hand in order to make Amulet Servness not this really high potential card, where it is basically a cycle 1 from your hand, right? Which is kind of nice in the right build. Is it correct, right? So, third question that we're gonna ask, right? What if all items had a cooldown period, right? You put it in play, has go again, so we don't have to worry about it disrupting the flow of your hand and what you're trying to do with your normal play line, but it now has a 1 turn cooldown. Would that be a bit better? I think so, right? Especially in the case of, something like a Time Snap Potion. If you gave Time Snap Potion go again, then you'd have a real big problem, right? Because it's just a free card that's generating 1 action point, right? And we know that leads to some awful shenanigans. So in the case of Time Snap Potion, again, having that 1 turn cooldown would definitely be worth it. And I would definitely think a lot more classes and heroes and builds and whatever you want to phrase it would slot something like this in, because it is just your panic button to chain X and Y together significantly easier, right? So yeah, those are sort of the conditions that come to mind, right? How strong should an item be, right? How limiting should its condition be, right? And then as well, again, we'll just throw it out there, a cooldown period. Now, with all that in mind, why don't we look at items LSS has done right? So, of course, we have Mechanologist and their items. So, even from the get-go, Mechanologist has done fairly well, and what you'll generally find is because a lot of their items tend to be equivalent or just slightly under a card, right? So, we'll go with Boom Grenade, Hadron Collider, and Powder Keg, right? 3 somewhat different abilities. So, Boom Grenade and Hadron Collider both have the newest mechanic, right, being Crank, which is your optional go again if need be. So, you can either use it to, again, continue your sequence, or if it is the final thing of your turn, you basically get a slight boost to its power, right? And then to combo with that, we have the degrading factor, right? So, Boom Grenade and Hadron Collider will, in a sense, get weaker the longer they're prolonged, right? Boom Grenade has a period before it expires. Hadron Collider, every turn that it loses a steam counter, it now gives a lesser and lesser buff, right? So in that example, right, Hadron Collider starts as a red 1 cost that gives 4 bonus damage. Now, that's about equivalent, right? Again, 0 cost red is about a 3, 1 is +4. So again, it's that utility of actually having a equivalent card, right? So on your following turn, it is basically a 0 cost card. So it now being a +3 is nice, right? In the case of Boom Grenade, the fact that it's 4 damage prolonged over as many turns as you can keep it on board, which in this case, right, would be, 1 to 2. You're either cranking it, getting rid of a steam counter and trying to utilize it right then and there, or you're getting 1 extra turn out of it, right? So again, it has higher than a normal red 0 cost buff card, right? Yes, it has a conditional effect, but again, what we're seeing here is that concept where they should be equivalent and unconditionally equal to, 1 card, if not around that, right? And then in the case of Powder Keg, we have the utility factor, right? So again, this is very similar to the Talismans to me, but no condition. While it doesn't have go again, it has whenever a Mechanologist gun you control hits, you may destroy Powder Keg and a defending equipment, right? So really nice. It'll stay on board as long as it needs because it has a more dynamic effect, right? So it doesn't need to degrade. And then when you do actually pull it off, it is actually kind of substantial effect, right? Destroying a piece of defending equipment is really nice. Now, of course, you do have to land the Mechanologist gun, but I'm going to give that as a given, right? Because Mechanologist gun is basically great, right? Pistol never to cycle, right? So yeah, Mechanologist is definitely the case where the items have done right. And again, going back to those 3 questions, they are equivalent or hover around 1 card worth of power, right? They have a go again mechanic by and large, right? And when they are conditional, the conditions are equivalent to the power level of the card. So yeah, Mechanologist where items have definitely done well. Okay, so then that leaves us one other case to look at, and that is going to be the royal set of items, right? So this is now going back to the goofy side of things, right? So they're all legendary, you can only have 1 copy, and then they have basically two effects. They have a normal level of power, right? And then if your hero is royal, they have a better effect. So in the case of the Imperial Ledger, you shuffle the Imperial Ledger back into your deck, and you get to create a copper token. If you're royal, you get a gold token, which is quite a substantial difference, mind you, right? Warhorn, pay 1, destroy this, and then choose any number of heroes. Each of them choose basically a thing on board, right? And then destroy it. If you are royal, instead you choose the permanent to destroy. Imperial Edict, right? Name a card. The named card can't be played until the start of the next turn. If you're royal, instead each opponent reveals their hand and then you get to name a card, right? So Imperial Edict and Imperial Warhorn are still kind of substantial effects, but here's the thing. Again, they're about equivalent to a card, right? Playing a card to disrupt in either case, in either effect, is, about one card worth of power. So the problem that then comes with it is the go again, that issue, right? So being able to set this up and get payoff. Now, again, this is where the cooldown period would really have to factor in, because you don't want these mechanics to be usable straight away. Although, I think they are cost-wise statted effectively, right? Again, you're losing one card from hand to play, plus their pitch cost. And so even if they had go again, it's the first thing you do. You have the choice. Although you'd have the theoretical pressure, right? The fact that it's on board and it's in front of your opponent can present certain pressure and cause them to change their plays slightly. So that is kind of added value. But again, if they had go again and you could put them on board without disrupting your normal play sequence, would they be a lot nicer? Yeah, right? And then in the case of Imperial Ledger, again, the same thing. So you're not having go again, mind you, for any of them but Imperial Edict on both the setup and the payoff, right? So in case of Imperial Warhorn, it has to be the last thing you do on your turn. So with Imperial Ledger, getting a copper token, right, is not great. Getting a gold token without go again is also not great, unfortunately, right? So yeah, the main issue that I do have with a lot of items is just how they interact with play sequencing and the fact that they just don't mesh. So yeah, I would put it to you, right? All items having some sort of go again, right? Or items being instant, that might be something. Although, again, then you get into shenanigans on playing your opponent's turn. So I'll go with all items having go again, but in certain circumstances, again, being more so designed towards that of the Mechnologist cards would be significantly better, right? So either degradable effects, the longer it stays on board, the worse it gets. Seems very reasonable, especially for high power cards. So again, if you want to save it, you're getting less and less of equivalent card value, right? Or again, that cooldown period where you put it into play, you can't use it straight away, so that it can sort of bottleneck certain effects, like in this case, the Imperial Edict effect, which is really nice to set up and use, obviously, right? If you could use that straight away, it's definitely a bit more damaging than the other two. But nonetheless, I think they'll do, right? So yeah, I'm curious, and the reason I bring up the royal items is because hopefully, right, we might see something from the hunted, right? I'd like to see a few items circle back, being yoinked out of the royal treasury or what have you armory, right, and being used by Fang and Cindra to hunt down Arakni. Thematically, that seems kind of cool. But anyway, what do you think about items and their place in FAB? Hope you enjoyed. See ya.